It's a phenomenon of absurdly foul play that voters across the country are sick and tired of. Nearly 75 lawmakers invested in vaccine makers throughout this pandemic. You don't think that members of Congress knew that before the general public? Because that information made members of Congress millions and millions of dollars just knowing what to invest in and what not to. 75% of Americans say this is actual nonsense that Congress can trade individual stocks, given the amount of info they have. Shouldn't they be held to the same standards at, let's say, federal workers, journalists, the financial sector? How is that okay? I mean, many of them are your own colleagues.
Well, Stephanie, obviously it's not okay.
As you can see, we care a lot about this story and have been covering it very closely. And our friends over at Punchbowl News have a big scoop today. House Democrats plan to announce a proposal next month to ban lawmakers, their spouses, and senior staff from trading stocks. Here's more from that reporting. Quote, the proposed legislation would allow members, spouses, and senior staff to hold mutual funds. The leadership's goal is to introduce legislation in the beginning of September and push it through the chamber that month. Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger has led the charge on a stock trading ban on members of Congress. She joins us now. As soon as I heard the news today, you were our first call. You have been leading this bipartisan proposal to get something done. Give us an update.
Well, I want to thank you for highlighting it for so long and highlighting not just the importance of this legislation, but the importance to the American people. Anywhere I go across my district, whether I'm there to talk about veterans-related issues or healthcare-related issues or any and everything, somebody in the crowd brings up this legislation and brings up the principle that they just do not think that members of Congress should be able to buy and sell individual stocks. And so we have been pushing and building momentum. There is bipartisan support for this idea. Certainly, I was proud to work across the aisle to introduce a bipartisan bill that would do just that, ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. And we are moving forward. There's been some fits and starts, but certainly getting to the point where we now have House leadership saying that they're willing to bring a bill forward. This is a tremendous step forward, and I'm going to continue to push hard until we actually get a bill through the House, through the Senate, and to the president's desk.
Well, last week you told the Daily Beast the people who control the calendar don't want to bring it to the floor. Is that Nancy Pelosi? Because she has not always been a supporter of this.
Well, I continue to be of the mindset that I am going to build the largest coalition around this idea, around our legislation that I possibly can build. It's why I've partnered with Chip Roy, a Republican from Texas. We do not agree on a whole heck of a lot of things, but we agree on this. In the early days of the pandemic, we sat on the House floor as there was report after report about members of Congress who had invested in pharmaceutical companies, who had invested in other pandemic-related companies, and we shared in that disgust. And we wrote this legislation to ban members of Congress from buying trading stocks. And we have built up a broad coalition of people across the ideological spectrum on both sides of the aisle. And thankfully, but not surprisingly, the American people are with us on this. And so while
where's Nancy Pelosi on it?
You know, continue. Well, we shall see when we actually move forward with a vote on this legislation. But I do celebrate a step forward. Certainly, having more people on the record, certainly having the House administration on record as saying that they support this bill, and not just for lawmakers, but for their spouses, which was a point of contention for some people, and certainly something that I believe deeply is necessary to have legislation that the American people can take seriously. We need to include our spouses in this, and so. Moving forward, I will share my real excitement the day that we actually take the vote. But certainly, this is a tremendous step forward and one that we've been pushing for months.
But there are members of Congress who don't want to do this, who make the argument, why don't you trust us? Why do you think we're inherently bad? How can they make that argument when we're a nation of laws, but it doesn't mean we're all criminals?
Well, I have had this exact conversation with colleagues, and
what
I have said, you know what, it doesn't matter. And I said, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter whether you are corrupt or you're not corrupt. Like I in fact do not believe that the issue is that there's mass corruption. Truly, I don't. But the bottom line is the American people do not trust Congress as much as they should. And we have the ability to say, you know what, time and time again, when members of Congress are outperforming the stock market, that doesn't pass the smell test. Time and time again, when members of Congress are buying or selling stocks based on what's happening in the world, and we may or may not have access to specific information, it doesn't pass the smell test. And so it is on us to put restrictions, if I could loosely call it that, to put parameters on ourselves to affirmatively show to the American people that we are deserving of their trust. And notably, this is not a higher or different standard than what exists for journalists. Many of the journalists who've been interviewing me about stock trading themselves have limitations on what it is that they're allowed to do with their financial portfolio. Stockbrokers have limitations with what they can do on their portfolio. People who work in the executive branch in the White House have limitations on what they can do, financially speaking. And so this is about good governance. It's about not only the potential for impropriety, but the mere perception of potential impropriety. And so I aggressively argue back with my colleagues that what they are or are not doing is not the point. It's what the American people think that we're doing. And right now they think that there's a lot of members of Congress who aren't doing the right thing. And we have the ability to show them that we are willing, to put these parameters on ourselves to affirm to them that we're working for them and not our stock portfolios. It's straightforward. It's simple. And I think the American people deserve this.
And the American people are asking for it. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.